Hey everyone, in today's video I have the beast, the Sony Alpha 1, and we're going to be taking this camera out on location, out in the fields, to do a real world review testing out the photo and video features, so let's get started. As always, we're going to start off with the Iaf test on the Ninja, and we're going to do IAF for humans because we have also animal and bird IAF to test out today as well. I'm using the Sony G20mm f1.8 lens for these autofocus tests, and we have easy mode with me and hard mode with Dan and his sunglasses. We're also getting 4K output with the Ninja on the A1, and that's why these autofocus tests look much better quality than usual. Okay guys, the autofocus is amazing. I feel like it's the best autofocus that I've tried from any Sony camera so far, and I feel like there's nothing Dan and I could do that's fast enough to be able to lose it. So I think what we're gonna have more value out of is testing out the autofocus accuracy. So we're gonna be trying out how good the autofocus is when shooting at the absolute crazy 30 frames per second that you can do with the Alpha 1. So in order to utilize the full 30 frames per second, you do need to have a lens on the Alpha 1 that has a linear motor. I tried using this with the Zeiss 35 1.4 and I could only shoot up to 20 frames per second, which is still pretty good, but that's what we're gonna do now.
Ready? 3, 2, 1.
My mind is blown. This focus test we did here, I just can't wrap my brain around how fast this camera shoots and focuses. Keep an eye on the timestamp while I'm flicking through all the shots we got. We took 128 photos in 5 seconds, and there are so many usable ones that I would edit from these 5 seconds. I was shooting in RAW plus JPEG as well, so this isn't the full potential of the buffer compared to if I was just shooting in RAW. We did another test, and this time I chilled out a little bit and moved slightly slower. The focus ratio was even better, and there were only 15 out of 125 photos out of focus. From the 15, I would say only those few when I accidentally got too close to the lens were unusable. The rest of those you could still use if you needed to, as focus was still on the face. I switched over to the G Master 135, and I'm going to take 2 photos of Dan, one with the mechanical shutter and one with the electronic shutter, and we're going to see back at home on the computer if there's any difference in the bokeh in both those photos. Shooting in electronic shutter can cause the image, especially bokeh, to look different and less defined, but from this quick test, in my opinion, they look the same to each other. Next up, please enjoy some montages of Evie running around. I was on the G Master 135 f1.8 and using the Ninja to record the screen. I found with the Ninja, I couldn't tap the screen to make use of subject tracking, so the focus point you see is good, but not as good as when you're using the camera on its own. So here you can see some of the shots we got in the 1 second of Evie running, where the focus keeps track of her pretty well considering I was shooting pretty shallow and with my subject running towards me. There are some missed focus shots, but with 30 frames per second, I felt like every time she ran, I still had a handful of in-focus photos to choose from of that moment. And here are some of my favorites that I took just so we can take a clearer look, and just look at the determined look on her face. It's so cute. Okay, bird IAF is next, and wow, I wasn't ready for this bird to start flying in this shot, and I missed the first few shots, and then bam, it's perfectly tracked and in focus mid-flight, and every single photo from this point on was in focus. The shots are so clear, I'm flicking through them in photo mechanic at 100% zoom. It was raining, and this was on the G Master 135 1.8 at wide open. The bird landed a little bit further away, so I slowly walked up to it and was able to get some more shots of it mid-flight. I feel like the subject tracking worked really well on birds, even for me, someone who has never ever done bird photography before. I mean, obviously, these shots are not really well composed. I'm on a 135 and I have a Ninja on my camera, but I was still able to get some really beautiful photos of this bird flying away from me because it really wanted nothing to do with me. The next day at our photo shoot, we found a kookaburra, which I think was trickier for the camera to get IAF on the eye since they have darker feathers, especially around their eyes. I did find that the bird IAF was appearing and disappearing during these shots, but I was still able to get a whole bunch of photos tack sharp regardless. Yeah, that's really pretty. I'll show you also what this spot looks like so you can see.
Oh my god, it's like such like elegant.
It's really like dreamy, yeah. The Alpha 1 produces 50 megapixel files, which I'll be sharing unedited JPEG straight out of the camera examples at 100% crop for you guys. And I think it's safe to say that when you zoom in, these files are absolutely beautiful. Something I noticed from the sample photos from the Alpha 1 is that it looks like it prioritizes eyelash focusing rather than iris focusing. From my experience, I actually ended up with a lot of photos with focus on the iris. I had some portraits with focus on the eyelashes, but the majority were on the iris. It would really only focus on the eyelashes when Aroha was smiling or looking away from the camera. No, I can't see anything in the background, surprisingly. It's like the sign, the bag.
Right there.
As you may have noticed, for this photo shoot, I wanted to use the new redesigned mechanical shutter, since shooting in electronic silent mode gives the autofocus system an advantage as it's blackout free. As you guys can see in the picture-in-picture, the blackout time is so quick that for me as an A7 III user, it's barely noticeable. The mechanical shutter on the A1 is also quieter than even the electronic first curtain shutter on an A7 III or C, and I really like the way that it sounds. Awesome. Okay, something that everyone is talking about is the fact that the Alpha 1 doesn't have a flippy screen. I personally love the tilt screen. I find it so much handier to have for photography and video rather than a flip screen. I think the flip screen is so much better saved for content creator and vlogging cameras such as the A7C. I love the flip screen on that camera, but the Alpha 1 I feel is a camera made for people who spend their time behind the camera rather than in front of it. So for me, a tilt screen I think is the right choice for this body. Oh, beautiful. Also, while we're on location and before we move on to video and our low light tests, I wanted to talk about the price. The question on a lot of people's minds is this camera too expensive? The way I personally see it is that you're getting a lot of features in just a single camera body. This is a flagship product. The A1 has many features from the A7R4, the A7S III, and the A9 Mark II, and new features we've never seen before, but it's all in one camera body. For a lot of us, having all of this in just one camera body is probably overkill for the kind of work we do, aka me with portrait photography. If you have the means to afford this camera, then of course you should go for it. I spent every day I had with the Alpha 1 shooting photo and video, and it is such a fun camera that really keeps up with anything you throw at it. I'm gonna change it so I'm not taking so many photos. Oh, that's better. Beautiful. And then I wanted to try and get you, could you please stand in like that little bit of sun? I don't see the A1 as a camera targeted at a certain field in photography. Rather, I see it as a camera developed to assist professional photographers who are maybe limited by the current cameras they use. And for a lot of us, seeing the features in the A1 is exciting as it's a good indication of things to come in the future Alpha 7 cameras, as some features will most probably trickle down over the years at a much lower price point. Seeing the autofocus system, shutter mechanism, LCD and EBF upgrades in the A1 and A7S III for that matter brings hope that we'll be seeing some of this tech fall into a certain A7 camera we're all hoping for. You guys know what I'm talking about. Dan filmed some video tests of Aroha in 4K and 8K. These are all on the Zeiss 35mm f1.4 on autofocus so we can see how the focus is and what the video quality looks like. We had no issues filming 8K on location even though it was a hot day in Australia, plus we were shooting with the camera all day. We do have an 8K video stress test coming up in the video soon. Also, I'm planning on uploading a full 8K short video tomorrow on my channel so we can all see the details in actual 8K as well. We tried a handheld walking shot. I really like the look of active IBIS. Standard IBIS does not crop in and active slightly crops in. And here is an example of all the picture profiles available. Cinetone is definitely my favorite. We also tried an 8K stress test with the A1 plugged into power so we weren't limited by batteries. This, however, does contribute to more heat, but I managed to film over an hour and a half before it turned off. I turned it on straight away again and was still able to burst shoot 30 frames per second. Okay guys, it's low light time. I'm super excited to try it out. The first thing I want to do is try out the anti-flicker shooting with the electronic shutter. I have the A7 III that we're going to start off with, so I would love to be able to shoot in silent mode with this camera when I'm out shooting weddings. It would come in so handy for the reception. However, when you shoot in silent mode, the electronic shutter in the A7 III has so much banding from LED lights. So now on the Alpha 1, you have the option to shoot with the electronic shutter in silent mode, and you can get rid of the flickering. So there is an option to turn anti-flicker off, which does it for you automatically, but I find it doesn't work so well at these high shutter speeds. So what I find works a lot better is if you fine tune the shutter speed yourself. So again, I'll show you with Dan. Right now we're on a variable shutter of 686.3, and I can move my shutter down until the rolling shutter and flicker of the LED lights disappear, which looks to be at a shutter of around 540. So this actually lets us choose whatever shutter speed we want. So if I want to be at a fast shutter speed, I can just fine tune it and keep my shutter speed fast rather than being forced to go to a lower shutter speed. So where this can be really handy is if you're under very bright fluorescent lights, you can still keep a fast shutter speed. Now, the part we've all been waiting for is the ISO low light test and seeing how noisy these photos get. So I'm going to start off at ISO 100 and we're going to go as high as the native ISO goes. I was shooting with noise reduction off just so we can really see what the noise looks like. If you have that feature on, you would get cleaner images. You can also clean this noise up in Lightroom as well. I think the images still look very clean up to ISO 5000. I also personally find that up to ISO 12800, the images are still quite usable and you would be able to clean them up a lot more in Lightroom. 16,000 looks okay, and from there onwards you could still shoot with these ISOs, but I think only if you're desperate. I also decided to quickly test out if there was any ISO difference between mechanical and electronic shutter, but as far as I can tell, the noise looks the same on both shutters. So that is all I have for today's review video on the Sony Alpha 1. Again, what a beast of a camera. I had so much fun testing this out in the real world and playing around with all the features of this camera. If you enjoyed this video, stay tuned because tomorrow I will be uploading a short kind of travel film of 8K sample footage for you guys to have a look at. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. I upload new videos every single week, so I will see you all next time. Bye!